Major new studies have revealed even higher levels of cancer-causing chemicals in America's drinking water, as well as all over the planet. As you know, I handled the first case ever tried dealing with this issue up in the Ohio River Valley. Our team tried 5 of them in a row, back to back. The defendant lost every time. That was DuPont. But this case is really about 3M, isn't it? 3M made a product, PFOS, PFOAS. There's a variation of the chemical, but it's all bad. It's all bad. The science is overwhelming on this issue. What is your take on what's developing right now?
What's developing right now, we're finding out from all the most recent studies over the last 12 months, is horrifying. Right, this is an issue everybody needs to be aware of, because we're looking at a situation right now where more than 200 million Americans, possibly all Americans, are drinking regular drinking water contaminated with these PFOS and PFAS chemicals that are known endocrine disruptors. They cause cancer. They can exacerbate asthma, make it more likely that you develop asthma.
Worse than that. This is birth defects.
Right.
I mean, the cases we tried up in the Ohio River Valley, I tried everything from cancer of the kidneys, cancer of the testicles. There's birth defects issues. Here's the problem. 3M knew about this within the first 5 years that they made the chemical. They hid it from about 1955 up until the mid-90s, hid it from the EPA. Their own documents showed that they absolutely knew that this chemical that's used, it's ubiquitous, Farron. They use it on frying pans to make Teflon. They use it in clothes to make waterproof clothes. They use it in Scotchgard. They use it, the place we're seeing it the worst right now is military bases use it as fire control.
Right.
In other words, they'll spray down an entire runway because of planes coming in, and they want to make sure there's no fire risk. What happens with that is it moves off into the aquifer, and then it becomes part of the drinking water. It's right now, if we look at where this is, it's in the environment for 1 million years. 1 million years. So if it goes into a riverbed, it's there for 1 million years, even if the water's fresh. Even if they try to take drinking water and to filter the drinking water in a particular area, it comes back because it's in the soil that moves into the aquifer.
And what's also terrifying too is it's not just what we're learning now is it's not just because it runs off and soaks in. We're learning that this stuff is evaporating with the water, and that is one of the major ways it's traveling all over the world. This latest study from this summer was looking at water samples from the Arctic Ocean. You know, not exactly a huge human population there to put this stuff in the water, and it's there in alarming numbers because it's evaporating and moving all over the globe. Yeah, and that makes regulation so hard. Is it's hard to regulate evaporation and rain.
Well, I mean, here's the real problem. It's what we call biopersistent. Once it moves into your body, it's biopersistent. Once it moves into the environment, it's biopersistent. That means it stays. It's going to be there. It's bioaccumulative. Each and every exposure to this product, PFAS, PFOS, increases the level of your exposure. The half-life on just ridding this from your body is 5.4 years. That's the half-life. And that means every day you're around this drinking it, your cancer burden increases, risk of birth defects increases, risk of gastrointestinal, bad gastrointestinal problems. They've just really started understanding how badly it's affecting the human body. But when you take a toxin and you make the toxin biopersistent and you make it bioaccumulative to where each and every exposure adds to that threshold, you've got a big, big problem. I don't see an end in sight on this. I mean, I'm the guy handling this litigation all over the country, and as I look at what the government's doing, EPA's running away from it, aren't they?
They are, and that's another terrifying fact about this story. And that's not just today the EPA's running. EPA ran away from it in the 90s, in the early 2000s. They're running away from it today. They always have.
And the problem is this never degrades. It's always the same molecule today. It's going to be the same molecule a million years from now. Thank you for joining me, Farron, okay?
Thank you.
Media coverage has been in a frenzy over the thwarted plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, which is ended with over a dozen individuals being charged with domestic terrorism. Molly, your take on this is probably the same as everybody else. First of all, do they even have a right to organize like this? That seems to be the talking point.
Right.
And yes, they do.
Yes.
But where do you see this going?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like these are a lot of wannabes, and it seems like there's just a lot of hate and discontent in different circles, and then they get together, whether it's the internet that made it easier or maybe their neighborhood folks. But this particular group of individuals, they organized their plot to kidnap her from a vacation home. Basically, they were mad at her. She's been a target since April when she did a harsh crackdown over COVID, and they felt like it was their rights being violated. So I think whether it's this particular group that's in trouble, whether it's the Proud Boys, whether it's white supremacy groups, whether it's even Antifa, it's like anybody that has an axe to grind, there is an internet page for you where you can find like-minded individuals and create a plan.
All right. So I saw an interview that you for this discussion that was
on NPR. Yeah,
NPR,
whether it was legal to have them.
whether it's legal to do this. It was so wrong. The answers they gave in this interview, this McCord woman,
yes,
were so off base, it was crazy.
Well, I thought it was interesting. And so before you tell me why it's wrong, I'll explain for viewers that essentially she was just saying, hey, our Constitution doesn't give them the right to exist. Militia groups were supposed to be formed by the government for the government in order to assist and help overthrow, adversarial forces. Yeah. So they're not authorized. That was her take. And you're saying contraire.
Well, I'm saying the First Amendment. Look, everybody, if you've been around more than 30 years, you understand the Nazis making this Nazi group marching through Skokie.
Right.
And all of a sudden we find that they were able to do that.
Because it was a peaceful protest.
It was a peaceful protest.
Even though it was a town of Holocaust survivors.
They've had situations where they've actually circled, they've circled temples, synagogues. They've had demonstrations right out in the streets. The First Amendment, like it or not, says they can do that. And the U.S. Supreme Court says, yes, they can do that. They can do this. Of course, they can't go plotting to kidnap a governor, but they certainly can have this organization. The other part of it was this discussion of, oh, gee whiz, this has only started now because of Facebook or social media. This has been around for 40, 50 years, hasn't it?
Naysayers, coup, folks that want to start a coup or upend whatever power is in charge at the time. And I think that's what you're seeing now. It's almost like anybody with an axe to grind can find a group that will mirror their thoughts. And then I think part of this, too, it goes back to even Whitmer talking about Trump not denouncing it, and whether or not you agree with his policies or not, people do have the right. That is what makes our country great. We do have the right to express our opinion. We don't have a right to plot kidnappings and be armed and threaten the lives of other people. But what's happening is that you get a few stray extremists, it seems to me, in whatever group it is, and then suddenly when you have something like the death of George Floyd, they become the attention becomes drawn to them because suddenly whether it's Antifa or if it's another group that is shooting or attacking individuals, that becomes the focus for the media as opposed to the bigger issue.
Here's what I was waiting for in the discussion. There's a way to solve this,
yes.
Okay? The way to solve it is there are laws that say we can trace the money of where this comes from. And if they cause a problem, if they burn down a building like Antifa.
Right.
Antifa burns down a building, Antifa holds they hold a rally where somebody is killed, somebody is injured.
Right.
What you do is you trace the money. Who gave Antifa the money to do that?
Like a terrorist
If it's
group.
George Soros, you go after George Soros. Whoever, if it's Koch brothers, you go after the Koch brothers. So there's a way to get to that, but it's not to say they can't do it.
Right.
Because the First Amendment says they can do that. They can't go, obviously, they can't go kidnap commit a crime, but they certainly can organize, they can march. Again, how do you get anything more repulsive than having Nazis walking through the very center of a heavily populated Jewish area, and to do that for nothing other than to make those people uncomfortable, to create outrage. Supreme Court says, yes, you can do that.
Yeah, they have a right to peaceably assemble. But it's going to be interesting to see what will become of these groups, because unless they're labeled as domestic terror groups, law enforcement's not necessarily going to look into them.
Yeah.
They're just going to consider them, just another group that has an opinion that you may or may not like.
Molly, thank you for joining me.
All right, thanks, Pat.